hello everyone. It is Andrea Maxim with another episode of the Profitable Practice Podcast. This interview that I have with Jessica is going to blow you away. I have been working with my VIPs with the Maximize Your Clinic course, and I find the consistent question that always comes up is, how do I send a newsletter out? How often should I be sending it? How do I create content? What are the best ways for me to get new patients into my office? And so with Jessica today, we're going to be talking about all of those things, especially when she gets into her editorial calendar where she breaks it all down for you so you know exactly what steps you need to do. So there's no questions, there's no room for excuses. You can just get things done, get it out there, and start reaping the benefits because, as we all know, consistency is always key. Now, before we get into the interview, I always like to just shine a light on the sponsor of the podcast today, and that is my 7-day detox program, which is a complete done-for-you program. It walks you through everything you need to do to create, whether it's an in-office or an online program, depending on where you are and what you're allowed to do. It gives you all the email scripts, it gives you the protocols, everything that I do, and I literally do this program with almost every single new patient, and out of everything that I've done in my office, I get the most repeat business with my 7-day detox. So I put that all together for you guys, and that is available on the website maximizebusiness.ca/7-day detox program. That's the number 7. So you can check it out there. But without further ado, let's get on to the interview with Jessica. Hi, Jessica. Welcome to the Profitable Practice Podcast. Why don't you introduce yourself to our listeners and kind of why I thought it would be so awesome to have you on the show?
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for having me here. I really appreciate it. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here with you and speaking with your listeners. And yeah, I'll just dig right into who I am and sort of what I'm up to. So I'm a nutritional therapy practitioner and a board certified holistic health coach. And at this point, I've been in practice for about 6 years. For the first few years of my practice, the business side of things really kind of swallowed me up as a practitioner. The big reason for this is that I didn't really realize that going into practice as a practitioner really also kind of means becoming an entrepreneur. I was so focused on my tools and my skill set, helping people, nourishing people, helping identify nutritional imbalances and deficiencies, that I didn't really give much thought or attention to systems, business processes, marketing, all of these things. And as a result, I was constantly overwhelmed. I was really stressed out, and I was considering abandoning my goal and vision of becoming a holistic practitioner, which was really sad. But instead of throwing in the towel, as I wanted to do many times, instead I just dug in and really started educating myself on the business side of things. So when I wasn't seeing clients, I had, my nose in a book or in an article about business and marketing, entrepreneurship. And I really did this daily, at least probably an hour or more every day on teaching myself these essentials of business, marketing, and entrepreneurship. I spent many thousands of dollars on different training programs and mentorships, and I did this for years. And fortunately, it paid off. I started seeing a large increase in my amount of one-on-one clients I was seeing. I was starting to conduct a ton of group programs. And I also had aligned myself with an integrative medical center, which was sending me almost more clients than I could handle, which was really lovely. I was speaking at these big expos and events, getting accolades from different governmental bodies here in California, state assembly, Congress, etc. So it was starting to pay off, and a few years into this, just kind of realizing these are really tools that every practitioner needs to have. It's not enough for us to just know our modalities, that we were trained in our schools and our certification programs. It broke my heart to see my fellow practitioners who were so passionate, like I was, with helping and healing others, but ill-equipped from a business standpoint, very much like I was, and seeing them struggle in the way that I had been in my first several years of practice, which was really, really a hard time for me. So what I did was I established an organization called the Holistic Entrepreneur Association. And I kind of started it by interviewing other practitioners in my area about what they were doing that was successful in their businesses and their practices. And I was just sharing things that had worked from my business too. I also brought in business coaches to talk about, other marketing tools and tactics. And within like 6 or 8 months, this little organization had grown to members in like 10 different countries, and
Wow.
was receiving really heartwarming feedback. So it's been a couple years now. We're up to members in 18 countries, and it's just been such a joy for me to be able to give back to my community in this way and help to take that initial fear and barrier down in terms of really understanding this animal of business. Yes. As a heart-centered practitioner, which that's who most of us are when we get into this. We're doing it to help and heal people, and most of our heads just aren't quite in that business and marketing game like it needs to be, especially when we're just starting out.
And your reason for starting the Holistic Entrepreneur Association is exactly why I started this podcast. So I think it's wonderful for sort of my goals to be mirrored back to me by talking to you and listening to you. And I think it's so helpful to have somebody to just kind of wrangle in everybody and say, what we're doing is not what we were meant to do. We didn't set off on this journey to become a business owner. We set off on this journey, as you said, as heart-centered, caregivers, and wanting to improve people's lives, not worry about money and finances and things like that. And I would really be curious to know, over your time of doing this association, what are the common fears and trepidations that you find a lot of your members, there's always going to be the same thing that people are going to say. What are some of those fears that people have when they get started or when they're struggling with their business that you've seen come up a lot amongst your members?
Absolutely. Definitely. I mean, marketing is, I know that's kind of a broad term, but that I have intake forms for every member. I read through every intake form to see what they're struggling with, what they're challenged by, to make sure that the resources I'm providing are really matching the fears and challenges of my members. And overwhelmingly large amount of the time, it's marketing and it's technology as well. I see that a lot, like not knowing how to put up a website, for example, or just feeling like they aren't tech savvy. That I hear that term quite a bit, so they feel like they want to, let's say, maybe be in the online space a little bit more than they are, but they just have no idea where to start, or they feel like they don't like to market themselves. It feels sleazy or it feels icky to them to, quote unquote, sell themselves.
Yes.
So those are the two big things that I see over and over and over. Do you find that those are similar things that come up for your members as well, for your audience?
Totally. And I can imagine that people, as soon as you said those two words, were shaking their head while they're listening to the show. And so I would love to hear, as a community, as people coming together and saying, this is what I've done, or here's some tools, how have you walked people through some of those struggles so that they get successful and they don't feel so impeded by these fears that they have to leverage these amazing tools to grow their business?
Yeah, well, so the first kind of resource I put together, still available on the website, is a free 4-week, it's called the Holistic Business Blueprint. And it's delivered via email over the course of 4 weeks, a couple of emails a week, to kind of guide them through the different sort of stages of business growth that they can anticipate happening as a practitioner. And, starting with business identity, et cetera. And then also really emphasizing the importance of systems, because as, solopreneurs, really, practitioners, usually we're the only person running the show and we wear all the hats. You
Yeah.
know, we wear the hats of finance, of, bookkeeping, marketing, all of these things. We wear them all. So in order to not go crazy, we have to create these systems and processes to automate and to be really effective in making things streamlined and as simple and repeatable as possible for ourselves. You really shouldn't be doing a um, a regular process. You shouldn't be reinventing the wheel, is what I'm trying to say. For example, if there's a, you do client probably emails after appointments, follow-up emails. So creating those forms, creating templates, really creating repeatable systems that you can plug in and increase your efficiency, because you simply have to. There's not enough hours in the day, and you drown in the tasks if you're repeating those consistent tasks that we have to do every day. So this course kind of walks them through some of those processes. And one of the things that I'd love to share today specifically is the creation of what's called an editorial calendar.
Yes.
So I'd love to dig into that, because so many practitioners know that they should be sending out a newsletter, for example.
Yep.
Email is a huge has a huge return on investment, and also the thing is too, selling that, that word, feeling like we're selling ourselves. Well, the thing is, as a practitioner, as an independent practitioner, you are a business owner. So the fact of the matter is, you need to sell your services. Otherwise, you're not going to stay afloat. So that's kind of the reality of the situation. But something to know is that you don't have to be sleazy and inauthentic. You can be completely selling from a place of sharing your value. I mean, that's what it's about. That's really what marketing comes down to. It's you, your message, and then that person that you're talking to. Ideally, you've identified that person quite well as your ideal client or ideal patient, so that your marketing message can be super clear and much easier for you to create, basically. So when it comes to creating that consistent content, well, selling is a little bit like dating, right? You can't meet somebody for the first time and propose, that's going to freak them out. So it's not uncommon that you need quite a few touch points with somebody in order to make that sale and make that close. So what sending out newsletters can do for you is create that communication channel with somebody so that you can, consistently stay in touch with them over the course of, however long it needs to take. Sometimes it's months, sometimes it's over a year, where a person will have that initial point of contact with you to when they actually decide to become a client. There's actually a study that I just want to reference. There's a lead conversion study about people who contacted a company for information about their goods or services. And the study found that just over 50% of the people who made that inquiry to that business will buy what they asked about within the next 18 months.
Wow.
So a year and a half, right?
Yeah.
Now, however, only 15% of these buyers will make that purchasing decision within the first 90 days. So that leaves 85% of the buyers who make that purchase decision between 91 days and 18 months later.
Wow.
So it shows you, if you don't have a consistent follow-up plan, you're actually leaving all kinds of money and sales and, help for people on the table, because you're not consistently communicating with them. So we need to nurture our prospects. We have to have a plan for staying in touch with them on a long-term basis. And so again, newsletters are a great way to do that. And the reason I wanted to kind of give that little bit of a preamble is sometimes people are like, why do I need a newsletter? Mm-hmm. That's why you need a newsletter. It's truly a critical factor in keeping in touch with your prospective clients and patients.
And I typically like to tell people that newsletters are kind of like the new radio ad and the new TV commercial. Right. And the thing that I've been continuously reading when I've been reading my own entrepreneurial books is you assuming that they don't want to read your email is you making the assumption that they don't want to hear more from you, or that they don't want to buy from you, or that they don't want the information that you can offer to these people. And I think a lot of practitioners, and I've spoken to them, are too afraid to start a newsletter list. They don't like receiving emails. It's all following with what you were saying about feeling salesy and being too nervous about, I don't want to put myself out there, and what if they don't want to read it, or what if they unsubscribe, which,
Right.
even to this day, and I've had a newsletter for 5 years, it still hurts a little bit
Yeah,
every
sure.
time someone unsubscribes. But I know that if they're not the right person that I'm talking to, I don't want them on my list anyway. Because
That's right.
there's a whole other side to this idea of list building, where people think that the bigger the numbers they have on their list is better, but it actually isn't. So if you start going through your list, you'll find maybe 30% are actually opening your emails consistently. And typically of those 30%, that's where your target market is. Those are the people that are cheering you on. They're your groupies, so to speak. So when
Right.
people are saying they have, 150,000 people on their list, I would love to know how many of them are actually active and engaging, or did they just opt into the list to just get on it? Because I find, again, the numbers and how many people that are on it, if I only have 2 people, should I even bother sending out a newsletter list? So I would just say, make sure that the people that you're attracting are quality. They're the people that you want in your office. They're the people that you want using your services that you connect the best with. And don't worry about the other people. Your list does not need to be, thousands and thousands and thousands of names long. You want it to be an active list, not a big list. So how do you feel
That's
about
absolutely
that?
right. Yeah, I completely agree with that. And I think you stated it so well when you said, who are the people that you want in your practice? Who do you want in your office sitting in front of you, every day as a practitioner? That's who you speak to. That's who you connect with. And that's who you're writing these newsletters for. And it's those people who, your ideal client, that's who you should be thinking of every time you're writing this content, every time you're creating this content. That's really who you're writing it for. And it's true. It's like, we don't need to have, tens of thousands of clients. We can't see that many people.
Yeah.
It's like we need, you have your certain revenue target, you have your certain client quota, whatever that may be. But in truth, there's a book I think called 1,000 Raving Fans, maybe, or 1,000 Good Fans, or something like that. The exact title is escaping me, but it talks about why, why smaller and quality is truly best. It's not about, I can understand feeling maybe a little bit foolish having 2 people and writing to them, and you're thinking, what am I doing? But it will grow from there, and it'll also, it's a great opportunity if you still have a small list, because it lets you build that muscle and it lets you practice before you have, several hundreds of people.
Yes.
That you feel maybe now you don't want to make a mistake because you have too many people on your list and you don't want to mess up, So I think that if you're starting very small, there's a lot of pros to that as well.
And I'm sorry, I know you have a lot to cover, but questions
That's okay.
are coming up into my head that I want to
Yeah.
ask you, if that's okay.
Nope. Yeah, of course. No problem.
So when you started your intro into the editorial calendar and talking about newsletters, you had mentioned a lot about, getting people into your office and making the sales and things like that. But then we also talked about how long it can take for someone to make that sale. Mm-hmm. So quite often I find when you put out, let's say, a lead magnet being a free offer of some sort. It could be a meal plan or videos or an ebook that you wrote. Typically, the industry standard seems to be you'll email them for maybe a week or 2, and then you kind of funnel them into more of a nurturing campaign. So again, it's that idea of you can really only talk to that person for so long about that one particular topic, and then you want to keep them on your list, keep them engaged, but maybe not about that particular lead magnet or opt-in. So I wanted to talk to you about kind of how the sequence looks that you find works the best for people. So to get them onto your list, quite often it's doing something for free, whether it's online or at a seminar. And then how do you communicate to those new people? And then how do you funnel them onto that nurturing campaign?
I think a big part of this comes back to making sure that your foundations are in place. So it makes this whole process so much easier when, again, you have taken the time to identify who it is specifically that you would like to have as an ideal client. Who's your dream client? And by making sure that you've really strongly identified their interests, their desires, their problems, their fears, what's keeping them up at night, then it makes it a lot easier to craft that freemium, opt-in offer, freemium, giveaway, whatever you want to call it. It makes it a lot easier to craft this to speak to them, to that specific person, so that they raise their hand and say, absolutely, oh my gosh, this sounds amazing. This practitioner is giving this away for free. Holy cow, like, of course, sign me up. And that's exactly the response that you want to evoke with that free offer that you're creating. So if you find that, one thing I'll say is sometimes it can be easy to have a couple pitfalls in this area. So a couple I want to point out. One is getting too broad or generic, because you're trying to talk to everybody, because you haven't really isolated who it is that you want in your office. So you try to make that topic for your opt-in offer much too broad. So it's just kind of like slides off, doesn't really impinge on the person you're trying to speak to. And the other thing is trying to cover too much with that initial opt-in offer, trying to kind of like dump all of your years of education, into that one opt-in offer. Yeah, which can be overwhelming to people. So you want to make sure you're giving them a quick win, a bite size. And I'll even say, I'm a little bit guilty of this myself with my Holistic Business Blueprint. It's a 4-week course, which is a little bit drinking out of a fire hose to a degree. So I'll be honest. I mean, that's something that I created, and it was like, oh, but I want to give them everything, and I still have it, but it's not really necessarily something that I'm promoting as like, oh, this is my sole opt-in offer. Because in truth, it's a lot of information, and really better would be just like a 1-page downloadable situation, which are some of the things that we're working on currently. So, having them drink out of a fire hose with the information can be a little bit overwhelming for people. So you want to make sure you're giving them a bite-sized, quick win, something that they can apply right away. And I'm not sure that I fully answered your question, but those were just 2 thoughts that I had, that popped up right away with making sure that you are keeping those things in mind. And then I think also in terms of like how that system would work or how that funnel would work, it's ultimately like, what's your goal? So is your goal to sell an online program? Because that funnel is going to look different than if you're trying to get a client or patient sitting in front of you in your practice for a free 15-minute consultation, or maybe you don't deliver that, so you're trying to get them in for something else. So starting with the end in mind is crucial. And if you're doing an online program and that's your end game, it's going to take more nurturing through that sequence than it would if you were going to meet with them in person. Because with any of these marketing things, what we're doing is we want to establish that know, like, and trust factor. And that's what we're doing. You want to work with people who you know, who you like, and who you trust, especially when it comes to something as personal as health.
Yes.
So as practitioners, it's like we play such an intimate role in the lives of our clients. So it's really important that they feel like they can trust us as practitioners, and that we are trustworthy, of course. So I think those 2 things, starting with the end in mind and making sure you really have those foundations in place.
And then the next question that everybody asks, which I'm sure you've had asked too, is, well, how often am I supposed to email them? Like, most practitioners, when I talk to them, they're only sending out a monthly newsletter, which I think if that, you're exactly right. And I personally would do no less than a week, or once a week, to contact them with my nurturing sequence. And then if there's other things going on, we contact them more. So where do you find is not necessarily the sweet spot, but kind of for frequency?
Well, I will say consistency is key. So if, as a practitioner, you feel like there's no way you can get out an email more frequently than once a month, then don't try to do, don't say you'll do once a week, and then sometimes you do once a week, and sometimes you do once a month, and sometimes you skip, a quarter. So I think that consistency is really the senior datum, so to speak. And I would say, it also depends too. If you're online, like if a lot of your offerings are online, you do need to be emailing more consistently. I think it should at least be a weekly situation. But I think that a bi-weekly newsletter tends to be a really good, solid marketing strategy, especially for practitioners who are, again, one-man show, don't do a lot of online stuff, a bi-weekly or minimally monthly. You really don't want to do any less frequently than monthly.
And so that's all that I have for the newsletter part. So let's
Okay.
go back. Let's go back into kind of the editorial calendar, because that was
Sure.
kind of what started this whole thing.
Yeah. So basically, as we said before, you're wearing all the hats in your business, so it can be overwhelming. It's like, okay, you want me to sit down and write like an article every week? Like that's not going to happen, and I get it completely. So when we feel like we already have more to do than we can handle, the key to this is establishing, again, a clear-cut systemizing, creating a process by which you can you can batch and then kind of automate the sequence. So an editorial calendar is just kind of a fancy way of saying like, what content are you gonna send out to your audience? So in keeping with newsletters specifically, the easiest way that I have found to do this is mapping out your content either 3 or 6 months in advance. If you can even do more than that, awesome. But as a minimum, doing your content mapping each quarter or every 6 months. So here's how to come up with 6 months worth of content without being daunted by it, because that might sound like, what, 6 months? That's going to take me like weeks to do. So the trick that I found here is creating week-specific content strategy to help break this down for you with recurring themes. So as an example of this, let's say you're doing bi-weekly. Let's take that as an example. So maybe on this format, the first week of every month, you would send out a recipe. And then the third week of every month, you would send out an article that's pertinent, an article or a tip maybe that's pertinent to your target audience, to whoever it is that you really want to be speaking to and communicating to. And then from there, you kind of bump it out a little bit more. You can assign themes to each month. So for example, here we are in April coming, into May. We're in sort of the spring cleansing season. We're moving into the summer. So let's say, maybe your March theme could be cleansing, whereas maybe your, November or, October, November theme might be nourishing or restorative. And by setting these themes with each month, you're only coming up with 6 recipes. And, if let's say we're doing 6 months worth of content, you're only coming up with 6 recipes. And that, March is going to be a cleansing recipe. Great. So you grab a detox juice or something, right? And that, the summer is going to be cooling or whatever that might be. And it allows you to kind of categorize this and break it down into categories. So it gives you some direction. You're not just sitting there with a blank screen wondering, what am I writing about? And it also allows you to do that with your articles as well. So again, let's just use that example, assigning the month of March as the cleansing theme. Then, you can write an article about maybe, the kidneys and their role in detoxification, or, how you can incorporate dandelion root to support liver detoxification, and so it gives you a little bit of a roadmap and a guidepost for how to create that content, again, so that you're not staring at a blinking cursor and a blank Word doc and you're just like, what am I doing? This is not worth it, So if you can just set aside like a weekend, and start chunking away at that. And what I find is easiest is creating an Excel spreadsheet where I can write out the themes. I can write out the exact days that I'm going to be sending it out. So if it's twice twice a month, the specific days that you'd be sending that out. And that way you can just start plugging it in. And I actually, this is the downloadable Excel spreadsheet is part, again, of that holistic business blueprint. So,
Okay.
Your audience is certainly welcome to download that through there, if you want to have that sort of pre-constructed template for yourselves. So that's a really wonderful way that I've found to be very helpful in just arranging the data for yourself.
Yes.
But also, you don't have to do recipe article. It could be, if you wanted to even make it a little bit shorter, it could be like recipe FAQ or FAQ, whatever you want, And a great way to think of content is just to think about, what are the frequent questions that I get? Because if your clients are asking these questions, other people have these questions.
Sure.
So just start doing a brain dump, and there's actually a tab for that on this calendar. Or if you create your own, create a tab on that calendar for when you start getting FAQs, just brain dump those FAQs in there. And that's, again, fodder for your content.
So the next question I have, of course, is, okay, I have all these ideas. I have everything mapped out. I know what days I want to send them on, and I know what I'm going to include in my content. How can I make it easier for myself so that I don't have to, on Sunday night or Monday morning, scramble to get my content written and sent out to my list? So here's the tech question. What technology have you found helpful as what we call a CRM software, or an automated way of setting up your emails so you know exactly what's going to happen, when it's going to happen, and you don't have to be scrambling at the last minute to get it out?
Right. So I will say that when I first started, MailChimp was like a popular, email newsletter service, and it still is, obviously. But it was, for me, when I was first starting, a little bit confusing for me. It was like a little too above my head technically at that point when I was brand new. So I found an email service provider that I really loved the user interface for, called MadMimi, MADMIMI. It's very drag and drop, and it is has a really clean user interface. Now, that said, this was 6-7 years ago, MadMimi is still awesome, but MailChimp has become easier as well. So I at this point recommend both of those platforms. They're both free, up to a certain amount of users and a certain amount of subscribers. I pay for MadMimi now, but I didn't for a long time starting out. They also, their free plans changed a little bit over the years, but you still can, both of these companies still offer those free plans.
So then my next question that I just thought of is, if you're familiar with Gary Vaynerchuk, he has that jab, 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 right hook. So this is also something that I hear in the industry, coming back to the idea of using your emails as leverage to sell things or get people to buy or book in with you. So how often would you give away free information, and how often would you give away a pitch or a promo or something like that to start to drive people either into the office or buying online?
So like Gary Vaynerchuk says, jab, jab, jab. For every 3 jabs, then you get free content, right hook being the ask for the sale. Yes. So that's a 3-to-1. I tend personally to do probably more like a 9 or a 10-to-1. That's what I'm really comfortable with. That's kind of my style. And it'll also ebb and flow depending on kind of the season for my business, if that makes sense. So like, for example, right now I have more clients than I'm able to kind of handle. So I'm not doing a ton of promotion. When I want more clients, I do more promotion. Right. So that's kind of how I ebb and flow with that as well. But I always, and I think this is like the key for not feeling gross about selling, is the fact that like you're providing value, and it's like you're just like loving up these prospects, and you're just like loving up these people. You care about them. That's like why we all got into these modalities, is because we want to help people, So it's actually, we're like the most set up to be awesome marketers, actually, as practitioners, because we love people and we want to help them. And that, in essence, is the foundation of like beautiful, effective marketing, because you're actually connecting with them and you're actually providing them that value. So just continuing to do that, even if you have that season of your business where maybe you don't need so many clients right now, so maybe you don't promote for, a couple months, even if you have a waiting list, and also you can mention that, like, I have a waiting list currently, and you're maybe creating some of that scarcity there. Sure. And that's great too. So yeah.
And the key there is also everything that you've been saying is connecting. So don't be afraid to put your personality on the page. Don't be afraid to make jokes or tell a bit of a personal story if it helps kind of solidify what the topic of the email is. Because I find also when we graduate, we're like robots, like medicine, I can't talk about me, it's always about them. And it's right now the way medicine is evolving, especially when it comes to holistic medicine, is people are generating and building relationships with their practitioner. It's not, I'm just going in for 5 minutes, get what I need, and see ya. We're creating that connection. So don't be afraid to create that connection, even though it's virtual and even though you don't know who you're talking to. It's still very, very important to, as I said, put your personality on the page.
Absolutely. 100%. I definitely agree.
Now, was there anything else about the editorial calendar that we missed?
Well, the one thing I'd like to say is just, don't let it feel, you don't have to let it feel overwhelming to you. And so the way to do this is just, again, finding something that works for you, finding the level of consistency that works for you, finding, I will say articles take longer than recipes generally. So and FAQs are kind of maybe midway between the article and the recipe. So I would say, try it out, experiment with it for yourself to see what's realistic that you have time for. But also, key thing on the editorial calendar that I want to make sure I communicate is that we often think that we need to this long, in-depth, super technical piece, about the microbiome or whatever, that's like super detailed and super technical, when honestly, some of the best feedback that, practitioners can get is like the tip on how to make that breakfast, as an example, or, how to, some sort of thing that they can implement right away. So I just want to say, even in your value, not like those awesome technical articles, like those are fantastic too, but don't feel like every single piece of content that you create needs to take you 8 hours to write, because it absolutely doesn't. So keeping in mind that the more practical and specific that you can make this content that they can really use in their life, that's they're going to be able to implement that, and they're going to be able to remember you. For example, I don't know how many times, like, I had a birthday last week, and I had somebody write on my wall, like, I always think of you when I see, berries, because I hear you say berries are best, and it's just like this little quick thing. And it's like, it's just funny because it's just those little pieces of information, those practical tools that we can equip our audience with, that they can then start to implement. And then, I've had so many people, when I lecture or whatever, they come up to me and they're like, I think of you every morning when I do blah, or like, because I gave them that little datum that they're now using in their lives, and I'm top of mind for them, for that thing. And then they would refer people to me because I was the one that gave them that little tool. So keep in mind that we want to provide little tools and valuable assets for people within this content that we're creating.
And so the next thing I can hear people saying is, well, I have no idea what to write about. I don't know what to do. And I would also like to say, just, again, in the theme of taking action and not wasting any more time and getting things out there, it's also okay to share other people's content so long as it's cited appropriately. So if you make your editorial calendar for the next 6 months, and it's just, I saw this really great article, or here's a great recipe from this place, you're still providing value, even though it wasn't something that you wrote personally or you didn't create the recipe personally. The whole point of this this podcast and everything else when it comes to entrepreneurship is just do something.
Right.
Don't let the excuses start to pile up where you don't do anything and you just stay frozen in place. So at least in the beginning, just pump out something on a regular basis, and then you can start to change the emails and make them more personalized, and that's okay too.
Absolutely. Yes. Starting where you are, putting one foot in front of the other, because I know I certainly struggle, with perfectionism, and that's something that, it's unnecessary. It holds you back. It's don't let, I think the quote is like, don't let, the excellent be the enemy of the good, where it's like, that's really good quality content that you can provide somebody, a recipe that you came across that you thought was awesome. That's fine if you didn't create it, say who did, and there's nuances to that. You don't want to repost something on your blog that somebody else made. There gets into a little bit of nuances there. But if you're linking to it, in your article, in your newsletter specifically, if you're sharing it and linking to it in your newsletter to that creator's recipe or whatever, that's absolutely valuable. And you're basically it's about you again nurturing that connection and connecting with them. And if you ever have that thought of like, I don't know what to write about, like I don't know what to write about, come back to who are you talking to? You're just having a conversation, right? So who is it? Who's your ideal client? Who are you talking to? And that's going to be, you'll see that it opens up the floodgates for you with content creation ideas when you keep them in mind.
Yeah. I want to thank you so much for giving us a really tangible example that we can start to do basically as soon as the call is done. And I will definitely link the Holistic Business Blueprint into the show notes of the podcast today. Was there any final thoughts, words of inspiration for people, regardless of whether they're starting out their practice for the first time or they've been in practice for a while, that you would like to, impart on us before we're done?
Thank you. Well, I mean, really, my last words would just really to give a heartfelt thank you to the work that you're doing as a practitioner. As a practitioner myself, it's like I so appreciate and value and just admire the work that you're doing. And, this is why I created the association, is because I feel like all of us as a collective group, it's like we really are changing the face of healthcare. We're shifting the paradigm. And it's just been such an honor to be able to connect with you and connect with your audience today. So I would just say keep up the awesome work you're doing. And, when you feel like times are tough, just reconnect to that purpose of why you're doing what you're doing. It's really such a noble effort. And we are making changes. So it's exciting.
Thank you so much, Jessica. And again, it's the Holistic Entrepreneur Association if people wanted to look you up and potentially join as a member. And if somebody wanted to contact you personally, what are some great ways to do that?
Absolutely. Well, you're welcome to reach out to me directly. My email is jessica@holisticontrepreneurassociation.com. And there's also a contact form right on the website. So either way, you'll reach me.
Beautiful. Thank you so much again.
Yeah, you're so welcome. Thank you.
Bye. So there you have it, guys. This is the time to take action. I don't want you to just sit and listen to these shows and hear all the great things and say, yes, I'm going to do that. That sounds like a great idea. You get out of your car or you stop listening to the episode and then you do nothing. So as I said at the very end of all of that, you don't need to create all your own content. You don't need to write mass amounts of emails all in one sitting. Excuse me. And you also don't need to be creating all your own recipes from scratch. The internet is there to share, and as long as you're citing it properly, your people may not be exposed to the same sites that you are. So never make the assumption that they know who Dr. Axe is, that they know about That Clean Life in order to make recipes. They most likely don't. And very often we get so caught up with the little bubble that we are in that we find it incredibly illogical for somebody not to know what we know. And a lot of people have no idea who you're talking about or what resource you're talking about. So share it with people and they will strongly value what you have to share. As promised, I am going to be putting that blueprint from Jessica into the show notes. So if you wanted to download that 4-week course, that's there for you. And always remember, as I say, if you have questions or topics that you want to hear, or you want to sit down with me on a one-on-one, totally free, there's no strings attached strategy session, please go to the website maximizebusiness.ca. Check me out there. But other than that, guys, take action, keep killing it. I'm Andrea, and I'm out.